Hi there, welcome to Dr. 2 Academy. This is Java tutorial for beginners, lesson number 6. The topic of this lesson is loops. One of the biggest advantages of computers is to do repetitive work. We use loop statement in our Java programming to do repetitive work, and the loops are often used together with arrays. By using loops, we can also save a lot of coding work. The most commonly used loop statements are for statement, while statement, and do-while statement. We'll learn how to use these statements in the actual coding. Now let's double-click the file eclipse.exe. These are the projects of our last 5 lessons. Let's create a new project for lesson 6. Click File, New, click on Project, select Java project, click on Next. Project name, Lesson 06. Click on Next. Click on Finish. Module name, Dr.2 Academy Java tutorial lesson 06. Click on Create. Right-click on Lesson 06. Select New. Click on Class. Package name Dr.2 Academy Java tutorial lesson 06. Java class name code tester. Click on Finish. Let's write down the main method. Public static void main string array arguments parentheses. Let's declare an array variable integer array numbers ten, 20, 30, 40, 50. Now let's write a loop to add all the 5 elements up. So we define another variable called sum assign 0 to sum. Let's write a for loop for initial value of I is 0, condition smaller than 5. We have 5 elements, so we do the iteration for 5 times. I plus plus increment I sum equals sum plus numbers I. Now let's print out each element value. System.out print line numbers bracket element index I. Element value print out the sum value. Now let's double click here. Click on debug button. Step over. You see the sum is 0. Now, when we first enter the for block, we initialize the variable I to 0. Then we compare the value of I to the value 5. So if this condition is true, then we step into the for loop. If it's false, then we'll step out of the for loop. Step over. You can see right now I is 0. I is smaller than 5. So we step into the for loop. Sum is 0. And the numbers right now I is 0. Look at here. So numbers 0, the first index is 10. So if we execute this statement, the sum should be 10. Right? Look at here. Sum is 10. Now we print out numbers 0. index is the value number 0. This one is 10. Look at here. We print out array element 0 is 10. Now, after the first iteration, we stop here again. Here we don't do the initialization anymore. We only initialize I once. So right now we will execute here, increment I by 1. Then we compare that value to 5. So if it's still true, we'll step into the for loop. If it's false, then we'll skip the for loop. I is 1 now. So 1 is still smaller than 5. So this condition is true. So we step into the for loop. We know that sum is 10, and we know the currently the I is 1. So this second element, numbers bracket 1 bracket, is 20. So 10 plus 20 should be 30. Step over. Sum is 30. Again, we print out the second element, 20. Now we are going to increment I by 1, so it will become 2. Look here, right now I is 1. Right now I is 2. 2 is smaller than 5, so it will come down here. And right now I is 2, so it's 30. We know the sum is 30, and the third element is 30, so it should be 60. Now the sum is 60. Again, we print out the third element, numbers bracket 2 bracket is 30. Now we're going to execute again to increment I by 1. Now I is 3. 3 is smaller than 5. And array is 3. This one, 40. 40 plus sum, 60. Then we assign the value back to the sum, so the sum will become 100. Right. Step over. Now we increment the I by 1. I is 3. We increment that by 1 is 4. 4 is still smaller than 5, so this condition is still true. We can step into the loop. So numbers, I is 4, number 4 is 50. 50 plus 100 should be 150. Sum is 150. We print out the fifth element, here. Now we are going to increment I by 1 again. And right now I is 4. So if we increment that by 1, it becomes 5. Then we compare I to 5. It's no longer smaller than 5, right? 5 equals 5. So this condition is no longer true. If it's false, it will skip the for loop. And come down right here. Let's click on step over. See, the skip the for loop. Come down here and the print out sum is, we know the sum is 150. Sum is 150. If we know the number of iterations, like for arrays, we know we have 5 elements, then we can just put the 5 here, and we always use for loop for the iteration. If the number of iterations is fixed, like in this case, the array has 5 elements, we are going to do the 5 iterations. So we use for loop. There's another way to write down the for loops. Say sum 0 for items, column, numbers, sum equals sum plus item but if we want to print out each element, here we declare integer I. Here we declared integer, but its scope is within this for loop. So it's okay, we declare another integer here. Assign 0 to I. Let's print out the element. System dot print line numbers plus I plus numbers element I plus plus. We want to put a new line between the sum is and the next block. So what we can do is add return carriage, new line, If you want to insert a new line, you can always use the carriage return or new line. Normally we put these two together, but one is okay. One is fine. But if you only use one, it's fine. Let's copy, paste, Control C, Control V. Shall we call this first loop? There. Now let's put a breakpoint here. Click on the debug button. The first loop, we did that already, so we don't want to spend more time on it. Just double click on this breakpoint to toggle it off. Now we click on resume or F8. It will finish the execution. All these statements will stop right to the next breakpoint. It will finish the execution of these statements, and they will stop right at this. It will stop at the next breakpoint. It's here. So we can see the output here. Sum of loop 4 is 150. Now we reset the sum to 0. The reason we need this integer, that's because we need I to specify the current array element index at each iteration. The item is the value of array elements at each iteration. Notice, sum is 0, right? Item is 10. 0 plus 10, now the sum is 10. Print out the first element value is 10. Increment I by 1. Right now I is 0. We increment I by 1. Then we start another iteration. So this for loop, it will just iterate through the array elements. Once it finishes the iteration, it will automatically jump out of the for loop. Right now, the second iteration is now we are looking at the item of the second element is 20. So the item is 20. Now the sum is 30. Print out. Increment I by 1. So in the next iteration, we can print out the array elements. Now the item is 30, this one, right? So 30 plus 30, it should be 60. Print out the third array element. Increment array element index by 1. Go to the next element. The next element is 40. Now the sum is 100. Print out the fourth element's value, 40. Increment I by 1. Now I is 4. So we have iterated through 4 elements. Now we're going to take the value of fifth element. Sum is 50, the fifth element. The fifth element's index is 4. Now it finished iteration through the whole array elements. It will finish the array. Now it will skip the for loop and execute this line. Right. We see the sum of for loop is 150. If we are not sure the number of iterations, then we can use the while loop. Let's reset value of I to 0, sum to 0, while sum smaller than 100 and I smaller or equal to 4. Sum plus numbers I system.out print line number plus numbers I increment I by 1 system out print line sum of is sum semicolon. So as long as sum is smaller than 100 and the index is smaller than 4, we'll execute the for loop. Any of the condition here or here evaluates to false, it will jump out of the while loop. Notice this is very important. If we don't have the I smaller or equal to 4 here, it's very possible we will access array element out of its boundary. It will have exception. Now let's put a breakpoint here. Toggle off this breakpoint. Double click on it. Now let's click on the debug button. Contains obsolete method. Sum is 0, I is 0 here. So this condition is true. This condition is true. Both conditions are true. We'll step into the while loop. The first element of numbers is 10. 10 plus 0. Sum is 10. Print out. Now we increment I by 1. Look at here. Currently I is 0. So now I is 1. Sum is 10. So this condition is true, right? 10 is smaller than 100. I is 1, still smaller than 4. Now sum is 30. Print out. Now we increment I by 1. It will become 2. Now it's 2, right? 2 is still smaller than 4. Let's look at the sum. Sum is 30. 30 is smaller than 100. So both conditions are true. Sum is 30. I is 2. So the element 2 is 30. That's the third element of array numbers. Now it's 60. Print that out. Third element is 30. The current I is 2. After we execute this statement, it will become 3. Step over. Now it becomes 3. 3 is still smaller than 4, right? So this condition is true. Let's look at the sum. Sum is 60. 60 is smaller than 100. So both conditions are true. Now sum is 100. Let's print it out. Fourth element is 40. Now we are going to increment I by 1. Right now I is 4. So this condition is still true, right? 4 compared to 4. So 4 equals 4. It is true. Sum is 100. 100 compared to 100 is no longer true, right? Because 100 equals 100, so it's not smaller than 100. So the sum is 100, so it equals 100. The sum smaller than 100 is no longer true. It will skip the while body and will come down here. Let's click on step over. See? Now it print out. Sum is 100. If we want to do the iteration at least once, we can use the do while loop. Do let's copy, paste, copy this statement, these statements here. Control C. Control V. While sum smaller than 10 and I smaller or equal to 4. System dot out dot print line sum of do while is sum there. So in this do while statement, the condition is sum is smaller than 10 and I is smaller or equal to 4. But no matter the sum value, it will always execute the loop body at least once. Let's double click here to insert a breakpoint. double click on this breakpoint to turn it off. Click on debug button. Click on continue. Step over. You see, it will not evaluate the condition here. It will just step into the do while loop. To print out this one, increment I by 1. Now we are going to do the comparison. Sum is 10, so this condition is false. This condition is true, but this is false, right? Sum is 10, so it's not smaller than 10. It will skip the do while loop, go straight to the next line. Here. Print out the do while loop is 10. The sum of do while loop is 10. So we can see the difference between the while loop and the do while loop is do while loop. We will execute the loop body first, then we'll do the comparison. But while loop, we do the comparison first. If the condition is false, we won't do anything inside the loop. But for do while loop, even if the condition is false, you will execute the loop body at least once. Now let's do a quick recap of what we just learned. The greatest strength of a computer is to do the repetitive work. By using the right loop statements, we can save us a lot of coding work and headache. We just learned how to use for, while, and do while statements in this session. And this is what we are going to learn in our next lesson, class and object. We will learn what is class and what is object, and how to use the class and objects in our Java programming. That's all for today. I will see you next time. Bye.